Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and to another video. Today I am sitting in my director's chair, so you know it's going to be more of a chit-chat type of video. So I was thinking, and I thought that I would share some of my tips and tricks for going to like a vintage clothing show or fair. There really hasn't been that many in the past 2 years, obviously because of everything that happened. There hasn't been as many in-person events. So I've been going to mostly like vintage stores or antique markets, but I feel like where I get the bulk of my true vintage pieces is at clothing shows. I feel like with restrictions being lifted, they're all going to be coming back now. And this actually brings us to today's sponsored, which this video is kindly sponsored by the Toronto Vintage Clothing Show. And can you think of a more on-brand, perfect collaboration? I'm so excited to be partnering up with them again. I worked with them right before the pandemic, but I'm really excited to be helping them promote the show this year as well. The Toronto Vintage Clothing Show is at the Queen Elizabeth Building on May 7th and 8th. Admission is $12 and there's over 100 vendors. They range from like 1920s style to a more 1980s style. So they have clothing, handbags, hats, accessories, whatever you can think of. And something that's new this year is that there's actually vendors that sell more of a street style kind of vibe. So if you're more into like 1980s up to like Y2K, which is like very on trend right now, there's definitely something for you. So it's not just like the traditional vintage kind of style, so there's a little bit of something for everybody. And I know a vintage clothing show can seem a little bit overwhelming if you've never been before because there's so much to look at and there's so many people, but I'm going to be sharing my tips and tricks so you can go into it like a pro. I will be referencing the Toronto Vintage Clothing Show, but I feel like these tips apply to any type of show or fair or whatever event it's called in your area. I feel like they kind of apply to anywhere really. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So before you attend, you definitely want to do some prepping. So the first thing that I would do is to look at inspiration. So I usually create a little Pinterest board of the types of styles that I'm looking for. It just kind of helps me visualize exactly what I should be looking for. So what types of handbags, what types of outfits, what types of things that I'm going to be looking for basically. It just kind of helps me visualize it a little bit better, and then I can access it on my phone and just reference it while I'm shopping. I just find it's a really nice way to kind of have your head in the game basically. Next thing I would recommend is to follow the Toronto Vintage Clothing Show Instagram page. They post the latest updates on there and all the vendors and like everything that's happening. And also the night before and the morning of, they're posting little sneak peeks of what's happening at the show. So maybe you see something in one of the photos that you're really interested in, that way you can kind of go into the show and look at that particular piece. I've actually done that before. One time they posted like this luggage on their Instagram story the night before, and then when I went in the morning, I like went straight to that vendor because I really liked that luggage. Speaking of which, you also want to sign up for their VIP email list. Right before the show, they actually send you a $2 discount, so you definitely want to be signed up for that so you can save $2 on admission, and then you also get the latest updates from their VIP email list. Something you definitely want to bring with you is cash. Most vendors do have the Square app so you can use your credit card, but some of them don't, so it's always good to just have a little bit of extra cash on you. There is an ATM on site, but I would still recommend you bring cash just in case. Something you also want to bring with you is a tote bag or one of those like foldable fabric bags. Most vendors do have like the plastic bags to give you if you buy something, but if you are trying to be a little bit more sustainable, or if you're buying a bunch of really small tiny things, it's a lot easier to carry around all in one bag, so you can just kind of like toss it all in there instead of carrying a bunch of tiny bags. You also want to pack a small little measuring tape and a little piece of paper with your measurements on it. And yes, there are change rooms at the Toronto Vintage Clothing Show, but sometimes it is a little bit busy, or the vendor in particular actually doesn't allow you to take items into the change room. I feel like that's very rare. Most of them do, but just in case there is one that doesn't, it's always good to just kind of have your measurements so you can just measure the item when you're there at the stand, and that way you know if it fits or not. I just find that as a backup, it's always just nice to have. So you're probably wondering, what do you wear to a vintage clothing show? So the number one thing, first off, I'm going to mention is to bring a crossbody bag, because you want to have your hands free, and a backpack is like, it's too crowded to wear a backpack, so you can just hit people with it while you're walking around. So what I would recommend is a small little crossbody bag. Second thing that I would say is to wear some form of tank top or tights or spandex shorts or something underneath your outfit, because there are change rooms. There's a women's change room and then a men's change room, but it's basically like an open room with mirrors in it. it. It's kind of like when you're changing in school for like gym class or something. So you are changing in front of other people. So if you're comfortable with changing in front of others, then that's great. I'm a little bit more shy, so I do like to wear something underneath. So I usually wear like a tank top and tights underneath my outfit. Another thing that I would recommend is to be very mindful of the types of clothes that you're wearing. So you don't want to be wearing like a blouse that has a bunch of tiny little buttons, because it's going to take forever to constantly change in and out. It's just kind of annoying. As well as shoes, you don't want to wear any shoes that have any buckles or anything that's really annoying to take on and off. I would just wear shoes that you can easily slide on, whether that's like a ballerina flat or like a block heel or something that you can just kind of like put your foot in and just go. However, this is the Toronto Vintage Clothing Show, so there are a lot of people walking around that do appreciate vintage and are wearing vintage themselves. So you can definitely wear something a little bit more vintage or vintage inspired. I'm going to be wearing a vintage outfit to the Toronto Vintage Clothing Show. But again, just be mindful again of how hard it is to take on and off. But yeah, if you want to wear something really fun and vintage, this is the place to do it. However, I would leave most of your accessories at home, just because for me, for example, I usually don't wear a hat to the Toronto Vintage Clothing Show because I'm always shopping for hats, so I always want to have my head open and ready to try hats on. So yeah, that's just like a little side tip as well. Like I said, there is a lot of things to look at, so you definitely want to take your time. You don't want to rush yourself. I usually end up doing 2 different laps, so I'll go in and I'll do a really quick kind of lap going through all the vendors, and then I'll go back and do a really slow lap going around everything again. I don't know why, I feel like it is the best strategy, because I feel like when I go in, I'm like overwhelmed and I'm just too excited and I want to see everything. So I feel like that quick lap kind of fulfills that need to see everything, and then the second lap I can kind of go in really, really slowly and look at everything. So I don't know, I just find that that's what works best for me. With that in mind, the number one rule of vintage is if you see something that you love and you absolutely must have at a reasonable price, buy it. You never know if the person behind you is going to be buying that piece or is eyeing that piece as well. So if it's something that you like need in your life, then definitely buy it on the spot. I know it's a little bit hard because you want to see everything else, but if it's something that you absolutely love and need, then buy it on the spot. However, on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you do see something that you really like but you're not 100% sure on it, write down the vendor number or the booth number, and that way you can kind of go back to it later on, and if it's still there, then maybe it was meant to be. I feel like I tend to do that a lot because I end up finding so many things that I want to buy, but I just can't buy it all like the first time around. So I usually make note of so many things the first lap that I do, and then I go back and check everything the second time around. So yeah, that's definitely one of my biggest tips. My final tip is going to be a little bit controversial, but I'm going to mention it anyway. So if you're at a vendor and you're buying multiple items, you can ask for a reasonable discount or a bundle price. Sometimes the vendor will be really happy if you buy everything and they'll give you a little bit of a deal. However, please keep in mind that these are small businesses that might have taken a really big hit during the pandemic, so just be mindful in the types of discounts that you ask for. Make sure they're reasonable and it benefits the vendor as well. So yeah, those are all of my tips and tricks for going to a vintage show. Again, the Toronto Vintage Clothing Show is on May 7th and May 8th. The admission is at the door. It's $12. Again, don't forget to sign up for the VIP email so you get your $2 discount. There is parking right by that building. However, if you do want to take public transit, if you are coming from downtown, you can just go to the GO train at Exhibition Place or the TTC loop and just walk over. It's really, really close. It's like walking distance from the station. What else? There is a coffee station, and like they sell like hot dogs and stuff, so you can spend the entire day there and have lunch there and just kind of like walk around the entire day. I usually end up doing so many laps and then end up finding things every single time I walk around. So yeah, I hope a lot of you guys were able to attend. Don't forget to subscribe as well as turn on your post notifications so that you don't miss out on any new videos, especially the vlog for the Toronto Vintage Clothing Show and a little haul, because I have a feeling I'm going to be doing a lot of shopping. I shouldn't say little, I feel like it's going to be a really big haul because a lot of these vendors have been shopping for the past 2 years for their own shops. So I have a feeling I'm going to have a massive haul to show you guys, so make sure you have your post notifications turned on so you don't miss out on that. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!